discussion with our panelists. And before we begin, I would like for each of them to just introduce themselves just briefly, and we will start with Miss Cashel Kelly.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cashel Kelly. I'm an author, speaker, trainer. I train on leadership skills for women, in diversity and equity and inclusion. And I am happy to be with you guys today to have this candid, so necessary conversation about diversity and inclusion. You're on mute, Andrea.
Ha, sorry. And now, Dr. Donna Davis, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Donna Davis. I am the inaugural Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for HCC. Incredibly excited about the role and what we have ahead of us to build a great DEI program. I am a seasoned diversity officer, having worked in this space for a number of years and have worked in higher ed for 20 years. I'm also a lawyer. I'm a civil rights investigator, certainly a change agent and a thought leader. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you today. Thank you.
We are so excited to have you as our first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. How long have you been here? A few weeks?
Let's see, a few weeks. Yeah, I think 3 weeks. This is the beginning of the 4th week. So I've hit the ground running. It's been great. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, and now Miss Yetta Lott.
Hi, my name is Yetta Lott, and I am one of the ADA counselors in Ability Services at Central College.
Great. And lastly, Miss Senta Eastern.
I'm Senta Eastern, and I'm also an ADA counselor at the Central Campus, working with students with disabilities.
Great. Then the last two are my colleagues, so I know them really well. So like I said, we have questions for each of the panelists, but it's definitely a discussion. If any of you panelists have anything you want to add, feel free to jump in. It's not specific. The questions aren't specific to just you, but I do have them so we can get this moving. So just a reminder, if you aren't speaking, to keep yourself on mute, just so we don't have feedback or echoing or things like that. Okay, so with that, the first question is going to be for Ms. Kelly, and it's very broad. So, so what is diversity and inclusion? What does that mean?
That is a great question, because a lot of people think that they're interconnected, but they are also interconnected, but they're interchangeable. And then people think they're one and the same, or they don't know what it is at all. But diversity within an organization is the different groups that make up an organization, whether it be race, sex, sexual orientation, have you been in the military, disabilities, just what makes us different, what makes us diverse in an organization is the diversity. But what happens in organizations and even societies that we stop short at diversity and inclusion is what the great job that we do in including those different people. So that's why it's important, why I said they're interchangeable, is that you cannot have diversity, equality, if you will, without both. You have to say that, you know what, we have this group of people in this organization, but how do we make them feel welcome? How do we make them feel as if they can flourish? How do we make them feel that they're a part of this team? Not that we have, we've hired so many minorities, or that we have so many minorities, we have so many women. We see a lot of that happening, to say that we have a diverse culture or climate, if you will. And the climate of an organization is kind of the shared idea of what people think this climate is. Like, for instance, we are being relaxed today and we are just having a conversation. That is the climate of this call today, right? So but we have to go a step further to say, how does everyone feel included, to where they feel comfortable bringing their whole self to the organization and to a situation, not just putting on, you know what I'm saying? Like, you go to work and you act one way, or you go to school and you act one way, and then when you get in the car, you act another way. How do we make people feel comfortable to bring their whole self and thrive in that regard? So in a short and dirty, diversity is the what, and inclusion is the how. It's the what of the people, that encompass your different your individuality. The inclusion is, how do we include these groups of people to make them feel a part of the community?
So it seems like we could have a diverse college, but may not be inclusive.
Right.
So we have to think of both.
Exactly.
Okay. And so how is having diversity and inclusion in education beneficial to the success of students?
Oh, wow. Students can't thrive if they don't feel inclusive. They may know that they're diverse. They know that they're diverse. And they may go to, a college that is diverse. But if they don't feel included, they won't thrive. They won't feel a part of the team. They won't feel their individuality, is important. When they go off to work in the workspace, they won't bring that to the workplace. They may be a manager that may be a part of the DEI team. They will have their own unconscious bias. So let me take it a step back, is that why people don't feel inclusive is because we all have unconscious biases about each other. We all have these things and I read something and I researched something actually that was very interesting to me, is that we have 11 million ideas, thoughts, perceptions that come to our minds simultaneously. But we only process 0.00001% of those 11 million ideas and stereotypes that we have about people and thoughts, because we only filter those things based on the experiences that we've had with other people. So if it's like counter-normative to what we think a person is, then an error. So we have unconscious biases about let's see, what's some unconscious biases that people throw around? Help me out here. What's some biases that general people throw around? That all Black people like hip hop music, right? Or all Black people like chicken. Or all Hispanics can't drive. You know what I mean? Just things like that. We have these unconscious biases about people, and then we carry those things. So when we meet someone that is not like what we thought they are, then we go, well, that's wrong. Our mental computer says something's off. So that's not right, So then we reject it. We reject those thoughts and say that can't be right. And then we have what we call this thing where we are judging people, and we have these prejudices about people. When we take away all of these unconscious biases, we now can have slow, controlled processing of people. We can say, this doesn't make sense to me about this person, but I'm not going to be as quick to judge. Let me try to figure this out. Let me learn more about them. Let me ask questions. Let me get to know them a little better so I can have more of a controlled processing of this person. And I can start operating in what we call low-level prejudice and give a person a chance. So that's one thing. We have to check our unconscious biases because we all have them. We all have them. They're deep-seated, they're embedded in us. So when we meet a person, like I said, these 11 million decisions, like, what do I think about them? So because we have to put people in boxes. That's how our brain works. We have to put everybody in a mental capacity. And so
to label
right,
everything.
We have to label you. It makes us feel comfortable to label you. And because I can understand it and I can go forward with that. But our labeling is sometimes off. Most of the time off about people. So that's about inclusion, that we need to say, this is different. I've never met a person like this before. And then have that controlled processing of that person.
Right. And so Dr. Davis, for you, what's your responsibility as the first diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at HCC? I don't know if you've fleshed this out or thought about it, or if you've been given a job description, but what do you see that responsibility to be?
My responsibility is to ensure that the proactive side of this work thrives, meaning that I am educating the campus community and the college regarding all of the nuances of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that includes engaging with talent engagement, faculty, student services, to build a DEI plan and strategic plan for the college to ensure that we are meeting the goals of that particular plan. And that happens in a variety of different ways. And so Ms. Kelly mentioned that we all have unconscious bias. And so it's important for us to recognize what those implicit biases may be. We all have them, as she mentioned, but there's a great tool that I want to mention to everyone today. It's called the Harvard Implicit Association Test, and it's free. And
I actually just heard about this last night, this test.
It's awesome. Well, it's actually a bank of multiple mini tests. So there are several mini tests. You can take one on gender and one on race and one on religion. And it certainly will help you identify what your implicit or unconscious bias may be. And I think that's the starting point to ensure if you're not aware of the biases, then you cannot implement a plan to ensure that it is not changing your decision-making process. So I'm happy at some point while someone else is speaking, I'll put the link in the chat so that everyone can go there. You can, again, it's free. It allows you, and I think sometimes it can be surprising to individuals, the biases that we have. But my role is to ensure that we are invoking empathy in our engagement with one another, because we will never understand the plight of someone who does not share our social identity if we don't start the conversation. So this is truly about me guiding the campus community through some of those conversations to certainly identify areas and strategies and systems within the college that can be improved around diversity, equity, and inclusion. That could be the faculty search process. That could be admissions and student success. That could be talent engagement and how we're engaging, not only from a recruitment standpoint. So you can bring all the mosaic of differences with diversity to the campus, right? But how are we retaining the individuals while they are here? Are they happy? Why are they not happy? And let's not forget allies. There are individuals who don't fall within any particular social identity or category, if you will, under the diversity, equity, and inclusion umbrella. However, they are still allies and they still believe in this work and they still want to be a part. So for me, it's about starting the conversation with everyone, ensuring that everyone understands to invoke empathy when engaging, and to guide everyone through the instruction and education on whichever category, whichever stakeholder group they're in, to ensure that they understand the importance of all three. Because from my role, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion that I'm ensuring everyone on the campus understands.
And so I think when we talk about diversity and inclusion, the flip side to that is discrimination comes up. And so specifically for our HCC students, if a student experiences discrimination at HCC, what recourse do they have? What process do they follow?
We have a full process at HCC as with any institution. You have the Office of Institutional Equity that is run by Dr. David Cross with an incredible amount and team of investigators. They are all widely regarded, certainly have the training and the experience. If someone felt as though they have been discriminated against, they should report that to his team. They can go through the process and make a determination on what, whether it's an informal resolution or whether it's a formal investigation that may happen, or whether it's something that a student just wants put on record. They have that choice. So in reporting an allegation of discrimination, they will have the opportunity to meet with an investigator from Dr. Cross's team and go through the process of determining what would be the best outcome for them. That team runs with, or they abide by and work through the policy. So you have an allegation and then you have a policy. They are gathering the facts. They're the fact gatherers. They're the impartial individuals who are going to determine whether a violation has actually occurred. And I will tell you that sometimes, although a behavior at the end of an investigation may not result in a violation, there certainly can be inappropriateness through microaggressions and other things that occur with diversity. And so that is the office that will work with an individual and a student regarding any form of allegations or discrimination that may happen. And I also will partner with them in those instances where it's not an investigation, but it's something that may need coaching for an individual to understand why their behavior, whether that's in person or right now we're remote. So we certainly have seen an uptick nationally on social media with behaviors that do not align with what the campus community expectation is.
So I want to, the next question is for Miss Eastern. You work in the Ability Services office. So what qualifies a student to receive protection from discrimination through your office?
Santa,
You're-
you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Senta.
I apologize.
There
Okay,
you
so
go.
students who come to our office are protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act when they have a qualifying disability that's documented. They're also covered by 504 laws, which covers the schools, and 88A, which was an amendment to the Americans with Disabilities Act that took place in 2008, and it expanded the definition of who's actually covered under what's considered a disability. And it usually falls in about 6 different categories that we see on a regular basis. And that's students who are blind or have visual impairments, students who are deaf or hard of hearing, individuals with learning disabilities such as dyslexia or ADHD, math or reading disorders, students with mobile impairments, or those with medical illnesses such as HIV or sickle cell or cancer, strokes, anything that would fall under a medical condition that creates an impairment for that individual. And then, of course, there's mental health, which we do see a lot of. And it could be, schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety disorders, a lot of that, especially, under the, with the pandemic being at hand. So those are all areas that are protected. So anyone who can produce that documentation for our office are protected under the Americans with Disabilities.
And so, Miss Lott, this question is for you. What do you say to people who believe that these ADA accommodations extend beyond being inclusive and it just gives the students with disabilities an unfair advantage? You're on mute.
I was about to start talking myself. When we have this conversation, kind of not really regularly, but with instructors, because sometimes you have instructors that feel like students are getting an unfair advantage if they are receiving accommodations for their disabilities. We have to remind the instructors that accommodations aren't about your access. It's about access to classes, resources, and instruction. It's not about giving an unfair advantage. We're just leveling the playing field. Students with disabilities, they still have to complete their assignments like every other student. They have to attend their classes like every student. They have to meet the curricula standards just like every student. And oftentimes the student with a disability has to work a lot harder than a student without a disability. Something that might take a general student, let's say 1 hour to complete. A student with a disability, they might have to work extra hard and it might take 3 hours. So again, we're just leveling the playing field. No one is given an advantage.
I think too, so my experience working in the office is when you can't see the disability, I also think that impacts our students to be discriminated against because you look normal, you look, you're getting A's, why do you need all this extra help? And that can be really frustrating and cause, I don't know if trauma is the right word, but it can cause stress to our students who have this underlying disability, who, you can't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. And it would, I remember from years ago, one of my first supervisors said, if you took away everybody's contacts and eyeglasses, we'd all be disabled, so to speak. That's an accommodation of sort, is for me to have contacts so that I can see far away. And that was, that's a very, it's a lighthearted accommodation, but it made the point to me, it emphasized the point that, oh yeah, I also have certain things that I need help with, and that's seeing far. The glasses are my accommodation. And for our students, I think, all these accommodations that we provide for them are to assist them only in making it equal access.
In addition to that, I would also like to add that everyone is just an accident away from having a disability.
That's right.
That's
Yes.
the other one.
That's
Yes.
Well,
That's right.
and I just like to add, if I could, it definitely is equal access, but I think what's also important is that no one's ability should be challenged from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint. Someone who's already been vetted, has already gone through the process of receiving an accommodation should not be challenged regarding their accommodation or asked to support, well, you don't look like you're disabled, so why do you need this? That's inappropriate, and that is the equity portion of this work. And that's when David Cross and his team become involved, when there could be an allegation of discrimination based on someone's ability or lack thereof. We know ability can be visible or invisible, and so it should never be challenged once someone, and it's against federal law. So someone mentioned in the chat, make sure you mention that this is not solely regarding our university policies, but this also invokes federal law. And so the American Disabilities Act requires that individuals with ability challenges not be discriminated against because of those, along with all of the other federally protected classes as well. So I just want to mention that.
And that's a good segue into my next question for Ms. Lott, is what's the process in place for students to be protected by the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act? You're on mute.
Sorry, I totally forget about that.
We need shirts. You're on mute.
Right? So there's basically 3 points of entry in becoming a student that's on file with Ability Services. We say Ability Services because we want to focus on students' abilities and not their disabilities. So there's 3 points of entry. The first entry would be before a student takes a placement exam, if they need accommodations for the placement exam other than extended time, because the placement test is untimed. But let's say, for example, someone needs an interpreter to provide instructions to the student, or maybe a student needs a distraction-reduced environment. So that would be some examples. So in that situation, the student would actually apply to our office, complete the intake and medical documentation prior to the placement exam. If the student doesn't require accommodations for the placement test, but they want to receive advising from our office, or they need help with registering, they need, a little closer and more contact with us. In that situation, they would get on file with us once they've completed the placement exam. And then the last point of entry is once a student has registered for classes, and then they would basically be coming to us in order to receive classroom accommodations. The student, like I mentioned, will complete an intake form or several intake forms. They will need to provide medical documentation. So just an example of medical documentation, let's say that a student has a learning disability and they were receiving accommodations and modifications within high school. They were typically evaluated in the 10th grade, and there's a long, it's called a full individual evaluation, FIE, and that basically goes through what assessments the student had completed to determine their disability, what accommodations and modifications are recommended, at the high school level, that would be an appropriate source of medical documentation. Let's say that a student is experiencing depression. That's often one that people don't think of. Oh, I have a disability. Depression and anxiety, you can qualify for services through our office for that. It is considered a disability. In that situation, you could possibly provide a letter from your psychiatrist or your physician, or psychologist, indicating that you have, let's say, for example, depression, and this is how it's affecting you academically. And then we can base documentations on there. It may also be medical, let's say diabetes or, sickle cell. That would be basically a letter from a physician indicating your disability and how it's impacting you.
So to be clear, what if a student walks in and they say, I think I have a learning disability? That would not qualify them to receive accommodations, right? There has to be documentation of some sort, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Dr. Davis, kind of pivoting back to diversity and inclusion, why it's gained so much momentum and its importance in the last few years. Why do you think that is?
I think the national landscape plays a part in that. We have seen an incredible amount of social injustice over the past few years, certainly during the pandemic. I think it has gained interest over the 5 years that I've seen more institutions create positions like mine, certainly corporations as well. I think people are becoming more aware. There's a personal awareness regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, even if individuals cannot put their finger on it or give it a title. I think it's important to individuals. I think individuals also want to ensure in an educational setting that they can come to work and be their authentic selves. And most certainly with our students, that we are educating them in such a way regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, that when they are off to their 4-year institution in this case, or onto their professional pursuits, that we have actually provided instruction and guidance regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and provided them with a safe space to have that discussion. So I think because of that, and certainly the national landscape and the social injustice that I've mentioned, that is also fueling the importance to many institutions regarding roles like this.
And Ms. Eastern, what ways does the Office of Ability Services promote diversity and inclusion, would you say?
Well, there are multiple ways that we try to do that. One is by, of course, providing a letter of accommodation, which is, it has to be adhered to by instructors, due to ADA law. We advocate for our students when needed. And we do have a process in place where students, when we attempt to advocate when there's some classroom accommodation concerns and we're unable to mediate with the student and the instructor, or we don't get resolution, then we may have to move that to another level. And that level is usually the Office of Institutional Equity or to our Director of Counseling and Disability Services, Ms. Kalani. Dr. Kalani. We also educate and train our instructors, and that can happen in a group setting, or it can happen one-on-one. We do get a lot of correspondence from instructors on a daily basis. And so educating is important, and we have tons of information on our website, which can be found under counseling. And we have an assistive technology person who, Ms. Norma Jean Brand, who ensures that the website is accessible, along with other, IT personnel. And then, of course, John, who's working out of Central Campus with us, they also ensure that that technology is available and accessible for our students. We have a newly formed, awesome student ADA organization that has its foundation out of the Central Campus. And I'm not sure if one of them is on right now, but if they want to elaborate and say a little bit more about it, it's called Dream Leaders. And it is a student-run organization. It's for students with disabilities by students with disabilities. And they have been very passionate and very committed to ensuring that students with disabilities have a voice. And so those are just some of the ways we try to keep that at the forefront and promote.
And so my final question is for Ms. Kelly, kind of broad, but what does the future of our country or society look like as it relates to diversity and inclusion from your perspective?
Wow. I think we are in a reckoning right now in that regard. Just as we mentioned, is I would love for diversity, equity, and inclusion not to just be a buzzword, because it became this big buzzword in the last few years because of all the social injustice and the racial inequality, and people are trying to just figure this out. And I think in the pandemic, when the incident happened with George Floyd, it became this big buzzword about anti-racism. And it became, and it died down, and so it's now kind of just picking back up now that the trial is going on right now. But my hope and my prayer is that it just doesn't become a buzzword, that it becomes a standard in our country, because we have seen that half of this country has unconscious biases, and half of this country lives in a fear of diversity and inclusion being something that's taken over. If we could be completely honest here, is that the reason we have so much unrest in this country is because the non-acceptance of diversity and inclusion. And so if we continue to have forums like this, we continue to educate ourselves, we continue to not have it as a buzzword or just something for a quick fix or a band-aid to say that I'm not racist, or but to be anti-racist and be allies and alliances in these causes, then I think that we can turn the tide, if you will, because prejudice is really ignorance on fire, is that when we don't understand people and we don't take the time to understand each other. So my hope is that it begins to get better because of the unfortunate situations that we have now, that we start and we begin and we continue to have these conversations.
Thank you so much. So those were my questions, the questions that I had for the panel. I know the chat has been kind of blowing up down there. I don't know, Carl, if there are questions that any of the students or
yeah, let us just to kind of, I see a few, and I think for those that had a question that haven't put it in the chat yet, I see a few that I'm gonna start with. But if you can put Q and then colon and then ask your question, that at least helps myself and Mr. Armando be able to kind of see, where to start and make sure we ask that question. So, once again, kudos to all our panelists, for doing such a good job and, giving us a little bit of color and being able to understand, like as Cashel would say, the buzzword, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that's a great thing. So let me look in it. Armando, if you're there, I know you've been really looking at the chat. I've been trying to make sure I populate the ladies to the front, but if you can't pop in, I want to make sure I don't start with anybody I didn't mean to. I see Ruth Dunn's question. She had a question for Dr. Davis. She said the Faculty Senate's DEI committee is involved in safe zone training for the faculty. Will that continue, and will that be expanded through the FS committee for all faculty and staff?
Great question, Dr. Dunn. I actually have already met with the co-chairs of the DEI Committee for Faculty Senate, and then I also met with the committee just this week regarding Safe Zone and all the other great initiatives that they're working on. So the short answer is yes, that Safe Zone training will continue. I've already pitched the idea of that being expanded to the staff as well as other faculty. That takes having bandwidth, so having more facilitators, and that's where we're starting, train the trainer and ensuring that more individuals, both faculty and staff, have that training so that we have the bandwidth to ensure there are enough trainers in order to expand safe zone training to both faculty and staff. So we are working on that. We've had those discussions, and so that those discussions will continue through the summer. Part of my role is to ensure there's synergy among the campus. I've often mentioned to individuals that the left hand doesn't necessarily know what the right hand is doing, but there are a lot of great DEI initiatives and programs that have already taken place and are ongoing. So I'm hoping to be a clearinghouse of sorts and also to have synergy among all of those different programs. But my idea, and certainly the institution I came from, we had safe zone training on a monthly basis. And that is something that I discussed with the DEI Faculty Senate Committee as a long-term goal to ensure that even more people are able to drop in and do the training.
Okay. So we have another question from, I guess it's Juan Carlos Rodriguez. And I don't know who it's directed to, but you guys feel free to be able to jump in if you understand it. The question is HCC staff being trained or informed regarding LGBTQ IA inclusion, specifically transgender and gender non-binary student inclusion?
So I am still doing the inventory of all of the different programs, but it's my understanding that yes, that is occurring. However, as I mentioned before, I'd like some synergy, meaning I'd like the entire campus to know all of the offerings that are happening, which is one of the reasons why even in my third week, I've been having all of these meetings to make that determination on what are the programs that fall under DEI that have already happened, and what are those initiatives, and what are the trainings, so that I can pull that together and be able to have an offering to the entire campus of the things that we are doing. It also helps me make an assessment on what the additional initiatives and programs and trainings may be that we need on the campus.
I think that's a great answer. And for those that are listening, I think that, first of all, hats off to Dr. Davis. Listen, we know anytime you're trying to get acclimated to a system that is as big as Houston Community College, and everybody on here that are guests that are on the outside of the college, just so that y'all know, we are huge, right? And for her to be just inserted in this thing and have to address quite a bit, that can be, listen, I digest almost as close to being a chancellor, you know what I'm saying? Well, you are vice chair, but I'm saying of an entire, city. I mean, this is huge. So kudos to you for being able to just kind of find your rhythm. You know what I'm saying? We know it takes a minute, and there's so many different elements and so many different variations of things to look at as it relates to this college. So, kudos to you on that answer. Here we go.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing?
Sure,
Because I want to make sure that everyone understands from my perspective, all things diversity, the mosaic of differences that we all represent, whether that's sexual orientation, race, religion, it is all part of my role and what I hope to impress upon the entire college. So
Yes, no. Well, listen, well, on this end, and I hope I speak for most of everybody that's definitely on here. Listen, we got your back. You know what I'm saying?
I appreciate it.
I believe teamwork makes the dream work, and we're all doing the best that we can to continue to push this whole institution forward and be great for these students. This other question, Claire Gonzalez, she says, does Ability Services Office have testing to identify learning disabilities or links to outside resources that students can use to get a diagnosis? She said many of our students were diagnosed years ago in their schools by educational diagnostics and therefore do not have formal documentation.
Okay. We do not provide diagnostic testing here through the college. We do, however, have multiple referrals where students can go in order to receive that. And we try primarily to provide them with services that are free. Legacy is one of those places that we send students to. They have a billing department, but they work on a sliding scale. And so if a student is unable to pay, then they'll still accept them and they'll they'll do the diagnostic testing. Texas Workforce Solutions also will provide the testing to whoever they're networked or connected with. And there are several other places that we have, on our list as primary referrals. But yes, we can help assist them with getting that testing done. Absolutely.
Absolutely wonderful. There is another. Oh, okay. I'm reading this now. So it says, shout out to Lenore Poindexter. It says, hi, Carl. This is for you. Good to see you here, FYI. I'm excited as a side note to be able to see you at our NSLS HCC Leadership Graduation online. Okay, well, cool. So NSLS Leadership Graduation is, the induction is coming up very soon. And said, can you please even, okay, yeah, that's a personal thing, I guess. I don't know. David Strider. David says, question, I am president of OUT students and allies at HCC, an organization for LGBTQ plus students and staff. Unfortunately, we have very few members currently. Is it all right if I promote our Discord server so that anyone interested in joining can do so? Sure. I mean, if you want to put that in the chat, that's fine. We definitely. I didn't know if you had a direct question, Dave Strider, for the panelists, but yeah, feel free to be able to drop that in the chat, as people can definitely get a chance to be able to check it out. Let me see.
There's one question from Andre Broussard.
Okay.
Says,
okay.
How can the very diverse HCC become more inclusive for everyone?
Yes. Anybody, feel free to hit that.
Well, part of that, I'll just jump in with my 2 cents. Part of that is understanding one another. And Ms. Kelly mentioned our biases and how that actually is a block to our interactions with one another. I think the unknown also leads to fear. And if you aren't willing to have the conversation with someone to understand someone else who may exhibit a difference that is unlike your social identity, without being willing to have that conversation, will never make the change. So what I always encourage everyone to do is begin the conversation. It's not one conversation, it's several conversations. And it's about being comfortable with the uncomfortable and invoking the empathy that I mentioned. So our languaging is even important. Instead of saying, well, why are you so uptight about that? How about you saying something to the effect of, well, tell me more about why that offended you. It wasn't my intention to offend you. We know that intent does not always equal the impact. And we also know that there are triggers in this particular landscape right now. There are a lot of things that could trigger someone's emotions. It may not necessarily all rest with you. It could be the 100th time someone has experienced that. And so our reactions to others through those conversations are what will help us overcome some of the stereotypes and building blocks to this work. And I might also say, there is a national diversity expert. She's a Harvard trained lawyer. Her name is Dr. Vernee Myers. And you probably have heard her quote before where she says, diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance at the party. So it's not enough for us to only have diversity. It must also include the inclusion portion of it. And that comes with beginning the conversation.
Love it. Love it. Melissa Gonzalez says, let me update. Will there be a DEIA strategic plan that includes accountability from the top down? And her second question is, will administration be trained?
Feel like I'm doing all the talking.
It's funny because a lot of the questions are kind of internal. Yeah.
I know, that's okay. That's okay. I'm fine with answering them. The answer is yes. So part of what I'm doing now is the assessment stage. There will also be a survey at some point with going across all stakeholder groups, so students, staff, and faculty, to determine what your viewpoint is of DEI on our campus. From that, I will be building a DEI strategic plan. It will either be 3 or 5 years. The chancellor and I haven't decided on that, but usually diversity strategic action plans are 3 to 5 years. And I am actually facilitating a summit with the Executive Council next month. And so that will begin the conversation regarding the DEI plan. And yes, all administrators at every level will have training regarding the DEI plan, and also the accountability portion and the responsibility that everyone has to ensure that we have an inclusive campus where everyone feels like they can be their authentic selves and belong in the particular space. So all of that is in the works. Of course, I'm a one-woman shop right now, and so I will be needing all of your input. As I've mentioned before, it's about collaboration and partnership. So I encourage anyone that's here today, please reach out to me. I want to hear from you, and I would be pleased to have any type of meetings with you as well.
Love it. So, and we have about 10 minutes, guys. So if you do have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat now. This is Claire. This is pretty long. I'm gonna try to do the Cliff Notes version because I don't want to sound, too dragged. But her question is, I asked this as a former Hispanic civil rights lawyer / advocate in DC and executive in the Clinton U.S. EEOC and serving in Clinton Race Initiative. How does Dr. Davis plan to address the complex and difficult issue of sharing HCC resources more equitably among minority and marginalized student populations? And I'll let her answer that, but she had some comments to follow, but if you could just go ahead and answer that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, that's part of the assessment phase. That's what I need to hear from everyone. And so before you can have action goals as part of the strategic plan, you need to know what some of those issues are. And so to answer your question, to address those issues, that must be embedded in the diversity strategic action plan. And then my goal is within each particular campus, there will also be an internal diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that addresses the overall college so that we can have an audit of sorts. I've done an audit at one of my other institutions, a diversity audit, to determine how are we meeting the goals? What are the metrics? What's the data involved, right? And so you don't just have a plan. It's nice to have a plan, but how are we measuring how well we're doing? And so that's how I hope to embed within that diversity strategic action plan some of those stopping points that will allow us to measure just how well we're doing over each academic year.
Gotcha. Great answer. And by the way, Claire, she did give a few examples inside of it. When you get a chance, Doc, definitely check it out. But at the end, she says, P.S. I am here to help in any way I can. Claire Gonzalez, we appreciate that. That's always a great way to be able to kind of end that thing. Lenore Poindexter, I do want to make sure I get a chance to highlight. She said, FYI, hi, Carl. Yes, just to restate, as an ADA student now and getting help with yet a lot and the other ADA counselors over the years, this program has really helped me a lot. Although it has been hard and there's been many setbacks, it's through sheer determination, and et cetera, to state it in short. She said, I am so glad HCC, after about 2 degree programs, is now helping me finally get on the end path to my now marketing degree at HCC. Well, congratulations, Lenore Poindexter. We'll definitely be talking more, and listen, continue pushing, right? It will support you as much as we can as an institution and definitely as human beings. Ruth Dunn says DEI is an ongoing process. It is unending, but the training needs to be in meetings like this, not our normal online training through just HCC. And everybody says they agree with her. And yeah, man, I mean, this is good.
There's a question for Miss Kelly.
Okay, go ahead.
That I saw. I wanted to get to her. It says from Andre Broussard. For Miss Kelly, in this very contentious environment, how do we start the conversation about diversity and inclusion?
It's a very good question. I think it's important that you have groups, that you put aside groups. For instance, I was very impressed with a lot of companies when the George Floyd incident happened, they had an open forum of a conference call, if you will, to talk about the feelings of African Americans, for them to share with the rest of the organization of the community about how they're feeling, and to have those courageous and conversations and open it up, because it is a contentious. This is a perfect timing, actually, because it's kind of it feels uncomfortable to me to have them before. Now people are welcoming the conversation and they're open to having the conversation, but some people are afraid to not say the right thing. So if we can have an open dialogue to say, you know what, how are you feeling about this? Share your feelings about this. Or can you share a little bit about how this made you feel, or how this made you feel? Or if this is an open forum, I think just having an open floor of saying, what is it that you feel right now? And there is not a right or wrong answer. And let's be open and honest right now and start to have that conversation. I think it's a perfect time, because we get to see each other's empathy. We get to see each other's vulnerability. We get to learn from each other. So I think just having probably conference calls where people can sign up and doing things like this, Zooms, and just saying we're opening the floor to just be open and honest right now is a great tool.
Good job. Ruth Dunn has a question for Dr. Davis. It says, please pay attention to those of us who are not in leadership positions instead of only the faculty and staff leadership. Will all stakeholders really mean all stakeholders? I'm also here to help.
All stakeholders means all stakeholders.
Yeah.
And just so everyone knows, I am fully able to tell you that I have the backing and support of the chancellor and executive leadership. This is a very exciting time for us. And I think that you will be very happy with what we are going to do. But I also am very interested in your feedback. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time. But yes, every stakeholder group. And when I say every stakeholder group, I mean student, staff, faculty, board, and alumni, because I think everyone perhaps looks at D&I from a different perspective. But I'm responsible, again, for making sure that there's synergy among all groups. So regardless of your stakeholder group, regardless of whether you're an executive, a faculty member, a staff, it doesn't matter, you still feel as though you are valued, respected, and appreciated when you are part of the college campus community.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, listen, Andrea, if you want to go ahead and lead us out, letting the ladies have a final brief word. We have 5 minutes left, and let's get ready to try to close out. We thank you, everyone, for the questions. Ladies, if you can, when you kind of close out, I guess Andrea will introduce it. Just let them know how they can get in touch with you all, and if you want to drop something in the chat. Go ahead, Andrea, you can close it out.
So I just wanted to say thank you to Student Life for hosting this event and for letting us get together and
collaborate.
have this conversation. Yes. It's amazing when we can all come together, because we get kind of siloed, right? Where we're just talking about ability service. We're just talking about, student organization. And so this has been nice to have this very casual conversation. There's no expectations. I think Ms. Kelly said there's no right or wrong answers to these questions. It's just a discussion, and for all of us to be a part of it. So I want to thank Student Life for that. And then if I would like to thank my colleagues, specifically Ms. Senta Eastern and Ms. Yetta Lott. They are ADA counselors at the Central College. So if you need services, you can definitely come through our office for that. And Dr. Donna Davis, we are so excited and thrilled to have you. I'm really looking forward to see how you're going to do this. It's a big, listening to you talk, project. I'm thinking, wow, it's not just students, it's not just staff, it's not just faculty. This is a huge undertaking, and I'm so happy that we are moving in this direction. And of course, Ms. Kishelle Kelly, if you'd like to let us know where we can follow you or find you, please go ahead. You're on mute, ma'am.
Sure. You're on mute. That's a great idea, actually. CachelleKelly.com is my website. It's my name there, Cashelle Kelly. I'm on Instagram at Cashelle Kelly, Facebook at Cashelle Kelly. That's where you can find me, CachelleKelly.com. And on Instagram is where I hang out the most, I guess, at Cashelle Kelly. So I would love, love, love to connect with you guys. And I did see a comment about pain sharing, and I thank you, Ms. Dawn, about resources for that kind of thing. And I think someone said, you know, not to pain share because people will take it personally. That's where we have to get away from, kind of not taking things so personally and understanding everyone's pain and giving people a voice. People don't trust the people that they're close to at home, and they're trying to have a trust level factor with you at work and in the school and all of that. It's time for us to start having dialogue. It's time. It's overdue for sure. So
Thank
thank you
you.
guys for having me.
Dr. Davis, would you like to say anything?
Just that I have an open door policy, even though we're remote. Please reach out to me. I look forward to where we're going. This will be an exciting year for us. And I think with everyone's input, we will see exactly how impressive and important and substantive our DEI program can be here at HCC. So I just look forward to working with everybody and bringing my experience to the table that I think will push us forward to the next level.
Good deal.
And then Miss Eastern and Miss Lott, would you like to say anything? Say bye.
I'll just say to the students out there that have a disability or maybe didn't even know that they had a disability, but during this presentation, they learned that they actually did have a condition that qualifies as a disability. Come and see us. We'll look forward to meeting you and working with you.
Okay, and I want to say thank you. Our dream leaders are actually on right now. I'm not going to belabor this, but if you are needing to get in contact with the Dream Leader organization, please contact our office and we can put you in contact with them. I want to say welcome to Dr. Davis, and we completely avail ourselves to you. You will have your hands full. But Andrea, thank you for excellent moderating.
Yes.
Ms. Kelly, thank you for being here and the breadth of your insight. And Mr. Carl Mays and Armando, we thank you for allowing us to collaborate with you in your vision for today. We appreciate it. And thank you everyone who got on. There were at least 65 participants today. And I think that's amazing. And thank you for tuning in.
Cool
I think
beans.
that's it for us.
Well, cool beans. So everybody, listen, continue to be great. You know, my motto is don't do nothing I wouldn't do, do everything I would, take it how you need to take it. But the biggest thing is this, just continue to be able to push the envelope forward. I think the beauty about life is that we all get a chance to be able to put our fingerprint on pushing everything forward and continuously making this society exactly, you know, the utopia that's in our minds that we would love it to be. So outside of that, be great. Dr. Davis, listen, Cashelle and Andrea and Cinta and Yetta, yo, listen, y'all did a great job. We will try to have some more of these type of talks because I think they're needed, especially for the students to be able to chime in. And shout out to the faculty and staff and administration that were on here. You guys continue to be great in the positions that you hold. And listen, all the outsiders that are here, y'all family too, continue to tell people about it. HCC is definitely doing things that move us forward. Outside of that, this is a wrap. This is diversity and inclusion. Shout out to HCC Student Life and Ability Services. We love you guys. Continue to move on.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.
Bye. Have a nice day. That's good. Very good program. You did
Thank
that. And it's
you.
very
Thank you for
knowledgeable.
that, too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Carl. Thank
All
you,
right.
Andrea.
No problem.